This is a story about how 101 miles on the Appalachian Trail saved my life. I've always set huge goals for myself, but the biggest goal I have ever set was to walk from Georgia to Maine. I set off from Springer Mountain, Georgia, with plans to hike the AT all the way to Katahdin, Maine. It was Valentine's Day of 2024. I chose the day specifically to honor my father, who had passed away on that same day 27 years prior. My father suffered from major depression, and that would cost him 2 marriages and leave him estranged from his kids. I always knew that I shared some of my dad's demons, but little did I know that my short hike on the Appalachian Trail would bring those demons to light. From the very beginning of my journey, I fell in love with the Appalachian Trail. What I loved the most was the hiking community that makes the AT so special. Friendships were formed easily, friendships that felt comfortable. We were like-minded folks with a common goal. Whether it was fellow hikers, ridge runners, shuttle drivers, hostel owners, or trail angels, we each shared a common ground, which was quite literally the ground beneath our feet. Georgia was tough, tougher than I expected. The uphills left my lungs feeling like they were on fire, and the downhills were brutal on my knees and back. I ached all over, but I was having the time of my life. Every time I started to feel down, I would meet a new smiling face, someone that would encourage me to keep going, to keep pressing on. For once, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. I had so many fine folks cheering me on. Each encounter with a fellow hiker would leave my soul feeling rejuvenated and refreshed, ready to keep pressing on towards that common goal that we shared. Hard days, and there were plenty, were made a little easier in the company of newfound friends. I had a hard time keeping up with folks, though. I was pretty darn slow, which meant that most of the time I was hiking by myself. I was okay with that, especially on days that were rewarding, days that would end with a big view. On those alone days, I would just look back and see how far I had come and take it all in and say, you know what, I can do this. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep pressing on. I had to travel my own journey. I had to, as they say, hike my own hike. I had to come to terms with the fact that my hike wasn't going to look like anybody else's hike. I was slower than others, and it was going to take me much more time than it did the average hiker to get to my goal. But one day that I can say I was very proud of was the day that I summited Blood Mountain in the rain. It was a tough day. It was cold, it was dreary, it was rainy, but I went straight up that mountain. I put one foot in front of the other, and it was hard. But you know what? I did it. It took me much longer than it took the average person to get up that old mountain. But I made it up in that storm to the summit, and I was proud of it. When I came up to the shelter there on the top of Blood Mountain, I felt probably more accomplished than I ever had in my life. It was a hard day, but I made it happen. By the time I reached Neels Gap at mile 31, I felt pretty confident that I could do this. Even though I was slow, I'd gone further than a lot of folks do. And a lot of folks quit by this point, but I was still going. I was still making it happen. And I was having fun along the way. Passing through Neels Gap, reality actually set in. I knew that at my current pace, it was going to take me much longer than what I had anticipated to hike this trail. I'd given myself 8 months to get to Katahdin, but going the way I was going, heck, it would take me 3 years. I had to come up with a plan B. At this point in my hike, it was as much a mental challenge as it was a physical one. After much thought and with the help of some newfound friends, Donna and Bill at the Green Dragon Hostel, who took the time to offer me sound advice, I made a decision to jump ahead, way ahead, to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. The good news was I wasn't alone. I'd formed a trail family of similar paced hikers who went with me from Georgia to Harper's Ferry. Unfortunately, our time together was short-lived, as everyone went their separate ways. They all went home, and I just wasn't ready to go home yet. I still had some hiking to do. So we parted ways at the Bear's Den Trail Center in Virginia, and I headed a little further south to Front Royal and the Stumble Inn Hiker Hostel, where owners David and Danielle were instrumental in helping me hike another 60 miles. I spent 2 weeks at the Stumble Inn Hostel, slack packing my way through those 60 miles. I can say I was in my element. I was getting stronger and faster, and even though I was alone on most days, I was truly enjoying my journey. At this point, I'd given up hope that I would make it to Katahdin in 8 months. I knew that my hike would be much shorter than that, so I let the pressure go, and I decided, rather than focusing on a through hike, let's just focus on a hike that is happy, one that I can do for myself. So I reset my goal to just 100 miles. If I could just make it 100 miles on the Appalachian Trail, I would feel a sense of accomplishment. When that pressure went away, I started to really enjoy myself. The hike became all about me. Every day was different. Some days I'd hike north, some days I'd hike south, but every day I hiked on the Appalachian Trail, and we would piece together little sections till I had finished my 100 miles. I was enjoying myself without any pressure, seeing new things, discovering new things along the trail, just really taking it all in. I was happy that I was slower. I was happy that for the most part I was doing my own hike, that I had alleviated that pressure of making it all the way to Katahdin. And the best part was I was still in love with the trail. I was still meeting new people and having new experiences, and every day I was thankful for it. I'd fallen in love with Shenandoah National Park. Every day I got to encounter a sweeping view from atop a mountain. It was absolutely breathtaking. No 2 days were the same. Some days I would climb mountains and see the sweeping views, and other days I'd be in lush forests. It was an incredible place. I tell you what, to date, the Shenandoah National Park has been my favorite part of the Appalachian Trail, and it's something that I hope to return back to. Altogether, I've completed maybe about a third of that section of the trail, and I can say it's an incredible place to visit. My favorite days were the ones where I'd walk through moody forests when the fog would be so thick that you couldn't see more than maybe 50 yards in front of you. Those were the really neat days, in my opinion. Sometimes they were spooky. Sometimes I heard things I didn't quite understand, and I'd encounter rock slides like this one and wonder where the heck I was. It felt like I was on a different planet. But each day was new, and each day was full of joy still for me on the Appalachian Trail. In spite of the fun I was having, getting my miles in every day, I was starting to feel a little sluggish. My energy levels had dropped off, and I just didn't feel right. So I went ahead and finished off my 100 miles and made the decision to go home, to go to the doctor. As it turned out, I had developed a pretty serious chafing rash that had turned into a double staph infection. I had made it home just in time, celebrated my 100 miles, and got on some pretty heavy-duty antibiotics. For 3 weeks, I returned back to the Appalachian Trail at Grayson Highlands, but unfortunately, I was only able to hike 1 mile before getting so tired that I couldn't take another step. I had to go back home and get on even more antibiotics. Even though this was beyond my control, I took it as a failure, and I slipped into a very deep depression. What I thought was just post-trail depression turned out to be something much more serious. I was not able to function. I was losing days. I couldn't focus. I couldn't even get out of bed. Upon the advice of my doctor, I went in for psychiatric testing. She thought I might have ADHD. What I came back with was a different diagnosis altogether: bipolar II disorder. Turns out my father's demons had a name, and I inherited them. As you can imagine, this diagnosis came as quite the shock, but I have come to accept it. I'm receiving the treatment I need, and I can say that I'm in a good headspace. I returned to the AT last fall to hike a couple sections. It felt like coming home. I will forever be grateful to this trail. I'm 56 years old. If I wouldn't have attempted a through hike of the AT, I may have never found out about my bipolar disorder. I may have never received the treatment that I need. 101 miles on the Appalachian Trail may have very well saved my life. For me, this journey has been twofold. It's been a journey of self-discovery, but it's also been about the people I've met along the way, the friendships I've formed, the community that I'm now a part of. That's why I'm going to keep hiking the Appalachian Trail. It may take me the rest of my life to get to Katahdin, but that's not a bad way to spend the rest of my life.